Hello and welcome. We're going to be talking about bedding and substrates today for rats. Now, I am only going to be talking about beddings that are available in the United States. And at the end of the video, I've tried many beddings, so I'll give my anecdotal experience with these beddings at the end. So what you want for a good bedding for your rats is you want something that's loose, that they can express natural behaviors in, such as digging and foraging. And you want something that can hold the ammonia smell, because rats pee a lot. They constantly pee. That's why they can't live in tanks like mice can and hamsters can, is because the ammonia buildup causes upper respiratory infections, which can obviously become... Sorry, my dog and cat are having a spat. Anyway. It can cause upper respiratory infections, which can then become serious as time goes on. So, with that in mind, I'm going to start with a very popular type of bedding, in the United States anyway, which is fleece. So fleece is obviously fabric. It's not loose substrate, and it doesn't absorb anything. So while fleece, you can have like the beautiful colorful cages and the matched themes and all that stuff, it doesn't really provide much for rats. And because it's not absorbent, the pee will just sit on top of that. And even if you wick the fleece and put something absorbent underneath it, it's still not doing the job. Like, the fleece will still smell. So if you use fleece, you'll have to replace it often, and that can get tedious and annoying. Not to mention, your rats will chew the corners, they'll burrow under it, they'll make a mess of the fleece. The next thing I'll talk about is paper pellets or pelleted litter, which some people like to cover the base of their cage in, some don't. As far as I can tell, it's not necessarily harmful to do this. Like, paper pellets and pellets, they do absorb the ammonia smell. They can dig in it, although they can't really burrow into it. But if you don't have like a really deep base, it doesn't matter if they can burrow or not. But the thing with paper pellets is that they're very hard pellets. So walking on that, I mean, just pour some on the ground and step on it. And like, imagine having to walk on that for the majority of your life. It's not pleasant. They're not going to enjoy it very much. And the other thing is they tend to start to disintegrate when they are peed on, when they're used. And it becomes very grimy and dusty, which is fine for a litter box, but for the entirety of the cage, it would get hard to deal with pretty quickly, I would imagine. But again, some people use it, and some people like it, some people swear by it. So next up, we will talk about paper bedding. So paper bedding is, I think it's different in the US than it is in the UK, because while it is dusty in the US, in my experience, it is less dusty than most wood shavings. But the thing with paper is, one, it kind of clumps together as they walk on it, unless it's Carefresh, in which case Carefresh it's clumps. You can't really do anything with it. I don't really like Carefresh. But the normal paper, the shredded paper, it kind of clumps together. It mats down, so they can dig in it. They do dig in it. They like to fluff it up. It's also great nesting material, but it doesn't hold ammonia very well. So you'll have to clean out. You'll have to spot clean a lot more frequently because of that. But it's soft. You can get a lot of it, but it is expensive. That's one thing I forgot to mention. Is fleece, the prices vary, and paper pellets, the prices also vary. Paper pellets are usually on the more expensive side, but pine pellets are very cheap. Paper bedding, the prices do vary a little bit depending on the bag, but it is on the higher end of the bedding spectrum. And considering it doesn't hold ammonia very well, you just kind of have to decide if that's something you want to go with. It's really just dependent on you and your rats. Then there's aspen, which is probably the most used type of bedding in the United States. So aspen, wood shavings in general, you want to stay away from cedar, but aspen and pine are fine. Pine, they both have to be kiln dried, but you can't get them not kiln dried, so it's fine. Aspen, the price again varies because some brands can charge a lot more than other brands, but it's usually on the cheaper side. They can burrow in it, they can dig in it, they can forage in it, and it's pretty good at ammonia control, but it is very dusty. I have never gotten a bag that wasn't just city. like, and you can see it on the outside of the bag, like the clear plastic. If you look at it, you can see the dust clinging to the bag itself. So then there's the pine, which is very cheap. Supposedly the best at ammonia control, though I haven't noticed much of a difference between aspen and pine in that regard. But they can burrow in it, they can forage in it, they can dig in it. But it smells extremely strong, at least to me. My camera woman had a different experience with pine. I'm going to have her talk about the pine later, because to me, it was unpleasant. But, yeah, so next up is hemp bedding, which is mildly popular in the U.S. Most of the hemp bedding you can get is for chicken coops. It's very dusty, but it doesn't have a smell. It's okay at ammonia control, and it's not, they can't really burrow in it, but they can dig in it, and they can forage in it. Hi, baby. You have aspen on your head. Can I get that? Can I get that? Thank you. We'll just set that on the floor for me to deal with later. Yeah, so, and hemp in the United States anyway, again, the price is very little bit, but everything I've seen, it's on the pricier side. And then, next up we have cardboard. So cardboard bedding in the United States is extremely hard to get a hold of, unless you're in Florida. So it's very expensive, hard to get a hold of. It doesn't have a smell at the start, but while it is very absorbent, it doesn't lock in odor the way most of the other beddings I have mentioned lock in. So it's not the best option necessarily, depending on your rats and how often they'll pee on it. Like, I have some cardboard in these guys' cage, and it is just mildly disgusting at the end of the week every time I have to clean out their little basket back here, because it's wet and it sticks to the bottom of the thing. But yeah. And then finally we have what a lot of people consider the best bedding or substrate, which is bioactive. So bioactive, you have to get a very deep base, so like you'd want to drop the base all the way down here, and that's extremely expensive. The dirt for the bioactive setup can be expensive. The cleanup crew is expensive-ish. Depends on what you get. But odor is kind of iffy as well, because the dirt itself doesn't control the ammonia at all. You have to have the cleanup crew for that, and also the dirt goes through a smelly phase. She's deep sniffing my elbow. Goes through a smelly phase, which a lot of people break at that point and decide they don't want to do bioactive anymore. But yeah, it's very expensive. They can definitely burrow deep into it. That's the whole point. They can kind of forage in it. I've heard some people talk about having like little babies getting blockages from the dirt because they tried to scatter feed in the dirt, and the rat was too little to handle it. But that did seem like an uncommon thing. I don't know if you can see my dog in frame. Can you?
Just the top of her head.
She's begging for attention. She's doing the classic pose. But anyway, so yeah, those are the best options for substrates and beddings. Now I'll talk about my personal experience with the majority of these that I have tried. And it's going to be a thing. So, I've never done fleece specifically, but I have done towels, which people don't like to do towels because the little strings can get wrapped around rat feet. Towels are more absorbent than fleece, so the thing with fleece, again, pee just soaks right through it, or it sits on top. It will smell horrendous. So, do you remember when Kendra was doing fleece and you had to watch her rats?
Yeah.
How'd that smell?
Okay, I love my friend Kendra.
Yeah. Kendra, if you're watching this, we adore you.
I didn't love her. So, okay, she had changed the fleece, I believe the night before she brought the rats over to me, and it already smelled, and then I had them for how many days? A week?
Something like that.
And I didn't have stuff to change it with, so I had to leave it, and it was horrendous for me, and I imagine worse for them. I would not recommend fleece at all, even in a pinch. No, it smells really bad, which is really bad for them. Mm-hmm. And it's not even easier to clean, because it's just like you have to dump it somewhere.
Yeah.
Same with when I was using towels at a point.
Yeah.
Which the smell was fine, but it was really hard to clean, and they also destroy it.
Yes.
Fast.
And the other thing with fleece, people say it's cheaper and it's easier to clean, which
no, it's not.
I just use a scoop with this, and in my experience, that was easier than having to haul those trays out of the cage
very carefully
every couple of days. Yeah, and then like remove it, and not to mention they would chew it up, so you'd have to. I was constantly going through stuff personally, like when I did that.
Kendra, who had the fleece, because it's so hard to get out without spilling, she would just shake it on the floor and vacuum it, because it's just like at that point really difficult. And even then, you have to like sometimes pick it off, and it's like you obviously don't want to be doing that.
Yeah. So, in my experience, it was not easier to clean.
I would not recommend it.
Price-wise, I also don't think it was easier, because most people who have the fleece keep the middle in their cage, and fleece liners, a full set of fleece liners, which would be 2 half liners and 2 large liners, cost like $75, and you can only use them, depending on how much your rats chew, a couple of times. So that's the thing with fleece. Paper pellets I've never used all the way across the bottom of my cage personally. I do have them in my litter boxes, which is these middle shelves. I don't know if y'all can they see that?
Not really.
Okay, I'll put a picture up. Never mind. In these middle shelves, I have them there. It's very noisy. They love to push all of it into the corner. Like, it doesn't matter how much I put in there, they will hollow it out. For some reason, I remember the first night I had like the full thing. I used to do Tupperware right there. Not Tupperware, storage bins. I used to do storage bins right there. I remember the first time I got these babies. This is a group of 7 that I got all within a week of each other, because I'm an idiot. And I remember the first night they were in this full cage after intros. My God, it was so loud. Thankfully, I'm a pretty deep sleeper, so I got over it pretty quickly, but it was so loud. So, paper bedding, I have a lot of experience with, because I used to have rats that were more sensitive to woods, so I would use paper bedding. I'm currently using aspen. I have yet to find what works best for all my current rats, so I do change my beddings a lot, but I used to use paper bedding. Carefresh sucks. It's dusty. You'd have to get such a big bag to fill one of these that it's not, price-wise, it's not a good option.
Maybe mention the scented ones and the colored ones.
Yeah, and then like obviously you have to be careful not to get scented beddings, because so many companies, pet stores, like to make their bedding scented, and the thing with that is specifically PetSmart had an issue a couple years ago where all their animals were being dyed blue because of the coloring they put in their bedding. And then a few years before that, Petco had a thing where they used an unsafe dye in their bedding and got a bunch of hamsters killed.
Yeah, that might possibly have been why my hamster died.
Yeah.
I used to get purple because I had no idea that it was bad, and my mom liked purple.
Mm-hmm.
So a decade ago, I would get the purple, and he died for seemingly no reason at all.
Mm-hmm. So if you're gonna get paper bedding, I would suggest just the brown or the white. I wouldn't get colored at all, personally. And then the other thing with paper bedding is, like, again, Carefresh is the worst. I didn't notice it being too dusty, but it's just not a very good product. I don't know much about Small Pet Select, so I'm not going to mention them. I've never bought it. I've just heard that a lot of times you open the bag and it smells like chemicals. But also, it's, I think, a little bit more on the expensive side. I can't remember. All Petco products are trash. I've never gotten a good one. Don't use them. Then there's the Full Cheeks brand. Very dusty, very fine. Most of it's scented. And you'll notice not all of it says low dust on the bag, which is clever on their part because they just make all the bags look the same, but some of them say low dust and some of them don't. So my suggestion is, if you're going to use paper, I would go with KT Clean and Cozy, because that, in my experience, is the best one. If you have rats that are sensitive to wood shavings and you can't go bioactive, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and you can't do like cardboard because it's not available near you, and you have to do paper, like, I would go with KT Clean and Cozy. Aspen. I have so much experience with Aspen. I've tried so many brands. I've tried, I think, most brands except for Small Pet Select. Because, again, I just didn't trust that company. They popped up a few years ago with, like, super cheap products on Amazon that they would, do sponsors on. And it was, like, throwing it in your face. And I just kept thinking, I don't know if I trust this. And then you'd go through the reviews, and it'd be people with bags full of Aspen bedding that had bugs crawling all over it without it even being opened. And I was just like, I don't know about this. So I don't know much about Small Pet Select. But KT Aspen, I'll rank them in order from dustiest to least dusty, which I guess would mean the first one to talk about would be Petco brand. The Petco brand one was so dusty, you could like see it in the air. You could feel it on your hands and your throat. It was the worst. Next would be KT, which was, although I also rank them by smell. The Petco one, not very smelly. KT, not very smelly. But you can actually, if you hold the bag up, you can see the layer of sawdust along the side of the bag. So that one, very, very dusty. And then, which is next dustiest? Probably Pet's Pick from Tractor Supply. There's not a lot of sawdust, but if you get, like, for example, a black trash bag and pour some of it into the black trash bag, the sides will be lined with dust. And the next dustiest would be probably Full Cheeks, which I don't like many of the PetSmart products, but the Aspen is an okay product. It is very smelly, though. It is not a pleasant smell either. I am sensitive to wood smells, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's not a pleasant smell. It's kind of I don't know. It smells gross and like trashy, like garbagey. And then the least dusty, and my personal favorite brand of Aspen, would be Night Angel Aspen. It has hardly any dust. It doesn't have any smell. It's very soft. The shavings are a nice size. However, it is, as of this video, $35 for a 65-liter bag. And in comparison to the Full Cheeks, which is 141 liters for $18. So, 65 liters would not cover all my cages for a cage clean, which is why I don't get it, even though, in my opinion, it's the best Aspen I've tried. But if you have less cage than I do, and you don't mind spending $35 for something that should probably cost $12, maybe give it a go. Now we're going to talk about Pine. I hate Pine. I hate Pine so much. It's dusty. It's so smelly. So I'm not going to talk about Pine because I hate Pine, but I'm also sensitive to wood smells. I'm going to let my camera woman talk about Pine.
I love Pine. Pine is great, actually, if you don't have a sensitive little pussy nose. Like my friend over here. Do you like that I'm just leaning on you? So, yeah. She's sensitive to smells all the time. She's a loser. I try and give her candles to sniff, and she can't handle it. So if you don't have
I can handle it if they're this far away from my face.
If you don't have a pussy nose, highly recommend Pine. It smells like Home Depot. I like that. Very nostalgic. So far for me, the Pine has been working pretty good. It isn't very dusty to me. When I would do it, I would open my window and turn my air purifier up, and it was fine for me. She had a conniption. She was complaining for days. Whining. Oh, it smells so bad. Oh, I hate the Pine. Pine is pretty good. Way easier to vacuum up than paper. Paper and cardboard is miserable to vacuum up. The Pine, immediately, because I use the shop vac. Way easier to get everywhere, though. So if your rats have little tiffs and one of them body slams one down, there will be a plume of Aspen that will get all over your brand new carpet that you... Pine. So I like the Pine a lot so far. That's what I'm using. Hi. Pine is what I've been using for a few weeks now. She's fine with Pine. Yeah, so Sarah switched back to Aspen. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to Aspen. I might try Aspen and paper together. The Pine might make your whole house smell like Home Depot, but it's not like a dirty smell. It's like wood shavings. It smells It smells like Home Depot is the only way I can describe it.
For reference to like...
Stop! Oh, I can't do it anymore!
To reference to how sensitive my nose is, I felt like I was walking straight into the haunted tree of the dead pine, basically. Like, I'd walk in here and my lungs would pretty much immediately shut down.
You know the great Deku tree at the beginning of Ocarina of Time? It's what you imagine that might smell like right before he says that he's gonna dip and leaves a small child Link to go to Hyrule and fix the entire kingdom.
For me, I felt like I was walking into just a wall of pine.
It was like a jigsaw trap for her.
And then when she came into my room, because I was just like, you don't understand.
It was panic.
When she came in here, she's just like, what are you talking about? It barely smells like anything. And I was like, what are you talking about? So
it was hard.
We both had no clue if the other one was serious for a little while.
We didn't know if we were gaslighting. Cujo, I'm begging you.
But I'm sensitive.
Yeah.
She is not. If you're not sensitive, you can get a giant bag of pine from Tractor Supply.
You gotta stop.
For $9.
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. But you want to keep an eye on your rats for sure, because for any of these, it might be great for you, but really bad for them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's Spectre, my I believe, cousin or something of Sailor.
Hex's sister.
Horrendously sensitive. Every single thing but a couple things has made her sick. And then Grant is kind of sensitive, and then Lockley is a tank. Nothing's ever affected Lockley. But, yeah, so you might personally love paper, but it might make one of your rats sick, so it won't matter. So, ultimately, you got to test it.
Yeah.
I'm done, right?
Yes.
Get pine!
We'll talk about hemp next. I tried hemp a couple years ago. I haven't had any since. I hated hemp a little less than I hate the pine. The hemp, it didn't have a smell to it. My issue with the hemp was the dust. It was so dusty, and I might have had like a slight allergic reaction to it because I would put the hemp in, and for the next 3 days, I would feel it in my lungs and in my throat, and like...
That would happen with me with the paper bedding.
Okay.
I would do the paper in my Critter Nation that's the single story, and I have never had experience like that where I inhaled so much dust that it gave me a sore throat and I was sick for a couple days.
Yeah, that was hemp for me. And my rats did poorly on it too. Rats that had never made a peep in their life were suddenly covered in porphyrin and snuffly, and it was awful. So my experience with hemp was bad, and that's the one bedding I have never ever tried a second time, other than now pine. And then... cardboard. So you can get cardboard in the United States. There used to be a company that made it pretty easily available, but that's not the case anymore. It's not easily available. There's a company on Etsy that sells it, but it's definitely dustier than the old kinds. It's the kind that you were using for a little while in Inspector's Cage.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit dustier. It had like almost a chemically smell to it. It wasn't bad necessarily. It kind of reminded me of like the inside of a freezer, like a fresh freezer. But it's
the Zora domain, if you will, after Ganon has taken over in Ocarina of Time.
It's very I don't know. I just didn't care for it very much. If you have a lot of rats and they pee on it a lot, it does not hold the smell in very well. That's an issue she had with it, is after a couple of days, she would smell the cardboard.
Yes.
And then the other factor is it's very, very, very expensive. So if I wanted to do all 3 of these cages, now that company no longer... See, I think they went out of business, but I don't know. If I wanted to get a bag that would last a month, it would cost, I think, $80. So it's not very affordable, and it doesn't do much for the smell. They can't... You can have iffy results foraging, in my opinion, because it depends on how big the cardboard pieces are. If all the cardboard pieces are like this big, they're going to pretty easily flip those over and stuff. Alright, so last I'm going to talk about Bioactive. I've never tried Bioactive, but I am going to talk about why I don't want to try Bioactive.
Can I throw my 2 cents in? I think Bioactive sounds kind of dope. I've been told I'm a hippie. If I had money, I would do Bioactive. Because I think that sounds more natural to me.
So here are my reasons for not wanting to go Bioactive. One, it's cost a lot of money. Like I'd have to do the drop down bases, and I'd have to get the dirt and the cleanup crew and all that stuff. Some of that is a one-time purchase or a not very often purchase, like the bases, the dirt. You don't have to clean up too much.
Did you elaborate on what the hell cleanup crew is?
Cleanup crew is bugs.
Yeah.
So it's springtails. Some people use dwarf isopods. You can't go much bigger than dwarf isopods because if you get normal isopods or worms, the rats will eat them. And if you are squeamish about your rats eating live bugs, you probably don't want to do bioactive. The thing with the cleanup crew is if you don't maintain the soil, the cleanup crew basically, they clean up the waste your rat leaves behind and any food bits that are left behind. Bioactivity works a lot better in reptile environments because reptiles don't eat as much, they don't produce as much waste. Same with like food, there's not as much food waste. Whereas rats will poop and pee in the dirt and they'll leave food, and you need a pretty active cleanup crew. And it can be hard to get that kind of cleanup crew established in your bioactive base. I don't mind bugs. Some people do. I don't mind them. The only ones that kind of, not to put a pun on it, but only ones that wig me out are earwigs. I can't stand them. I don't know why. I'm fine with spiders. I'm fine with scorpions. I'm fine with millipedes and centipedes. But I see an earwig and I'm just like, eh.
I say Hakuna Matata, because whatever is good for Timon and Pumbaa.
None of that's why I don't necessarily want to go bioactive, because I can save up the money to do bioactivity. I can get the cleanup crew because they don't bother me. I can even probably get past the part of setting up your bioactive base where it smells horrendous, because after you add the animals in, there's a period where it just stinks.
That's what it smell like. Dirt?
I don't know.
I love the smell of dirt.
I've only heard them talk about it smelling not like dirt, like waste.
If you guys are seeing a weird blue thing on her glasses, that's because she's looking too hard.
I have blue light glasses, sorry.
I would love the smell of dirt, though.
The other reason I don't want to go bioactive are the other reasons. One, you have to turn the dirt, and I hate doing that in my dig box, so I can only imagine it'd be so much worse in this. Two, sometimes when you get babies, and I've experienced this with my dig box, and I've heard people talking about it with the bioactive base, sometimes when you get babies and they're not bonded to you, they dig a tunnel, go into that tunnel, and don't come out. And
I did that when we first met.
And I know exactly how hard it is to get a rat out of a tunnel with just my dig box. And granted, my dig box is a lot bigger than some people's, but it's not fun.
Why don't you tell them what you do, you psycho?
I wait for them to poke their little nose out, and then I collapse the tunnels behind them. You gotta do what you gotta do.
Have you ever played Lemmings?
I don't want to deal with a situation where I have to get a rat out, and they won't come out, and I have to dig them out. Because I've seen people do that. I've seen, like, posts on Instagram of people, like, surrounded by buckets of dirt as they try to find a rat that's missing. Which brings me to my next point. I am very paranoid. I am a very paranoid person in general. I would constantly, when I had an old rat, be worried that they would die in a tunnel, and then I'd have to go dig out their body. I don't want to deal with that. Straight up. And I also know, from my dig box, how much of a mess the dirt is.
What are you talking about?
There's dirt all over me all the time. It's in my desk. It's in the cracks of my desk. It's in their cages. It's in the cracks of my bookshelf.
In my bra, personally.
It is in my bra. It's everywhere. And if they had a base that big, this cage would be surrounded by dirt constantly. I would have to continuously replenish the cleanup crew, continuously replenish the dirt, continuously vacuum. It would be a thing. And I could explain to you in great detail exactly how all these things make me feel and why I don't want to do it, or I can be honest with you and say, I just don't want to deal with it. Bioactive...
Y'all?
I think Humdrum's putting a baby in their place. I just don't want to deal with it. And a bioactive base sounds awesome, and I can understand why a lot of people think it's the best option. But my suggestion would be to go onto Facebook and join the Naturalistic and Bioactive Setups group and just lurk for a bit, because there's also this thing that happens with bioactive bases where you get bugs in it that aren't your cleanup crew. They just kind of manifest.
They're new friends.
You get soil mites, you get worms, you get, sorry, what is it?
Do you roly-polies?
No. Well, actually, that's what isopods are. So if you have dwarf white isopods, you can have a roly-poly, but not all of them roll up. You'd have to have an armored one.
That would be cool to have roly-polies.
I can get a colony of isopods just for fun.
Would you?
Yeah.
Do it.
We have that 20-gallon tank out in the back, in the garage. Anyway.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's my suggestion if you kind of want to go bioactive, is just join that Facebook group and lurk and see what issues people deal with. Because, oh yeah, fungus gnats. That's what I was trying to think of. You get fungus gnats. And we already have a gnat problem here. Every summer they breed like crazy and infest everything in the house and in the neighborhood, and it's a thing where I live. But yes, those are the substrates you can get for your rats. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do all the nice stuff down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!